Hello and welcome to an overview of the invoice review application that we built on the reView platform. My name is Jeff Dalgleish and I'm one of the founders at Data Squared. This first application, Invoice Review, has been designed to make it easier to code invoices using complex coding logic to different account codes and cost centers. So let me just quickly show you how it works, and then I'll show you some of the features of the application. So to start off, we'll click on the Invoice Coding Assistant button. What that'll do is bring up a screen that's asking us to select an invoice. So we'll click on the box and we will choose an invoice here. We will choose this invoice here. Now open it, and you'll notice that right side of the screen we have the computer thinking, and on the left side of the screen we can look at the invoice. So this is an invoice from Liberty. It's for some wireline services as detailed on the field ticket, and they mention a well name or a job. And you can see there's something's changed on the right side of the screen. We'll come back and take a look at that in a minute. But I just want to show you a little bit more about what data we're using here. So we've got an image of the invoice, and then we've got a code down here. And you can see on the bottom of the screen, this is a stamp. This is just to verify what we're doing. We're not using this information in our coding, but we're comparing to it. You can see here we've picked the user has a code 8306.206 and an AFE 23708. So there's some information from this invoice that we want to see if we can get. So what we're doing is we're looking at the invoice and we try to extract from this invoice everything we can about it. So the names of the wells, the information on the ticket, all the information we have about this particular vendor and this particular invoice. We connect all this information together. So the first thing it does, it comes back with a code, and we can see it's chosen code 8306203, which is the correct code, if you remember from before. And it explains its reasoning. It's talking about this invoice is describing wireline services with ballistic release tools, which are typically associated with logging and perforation activities during the completion phase. These services are critical for data acquisition and intervention, aligning with the description of logging and perforation services. There's a high confidence in this. Now it lists the rest of the additional codes that potentially it could be coded to. We include up to 5 on here, just to show you some maybe other ways of thinking about this invoice. So it comes up with some ideas there. Here we show all the information we were able to extract from the invoice. So we first create a basic invoice description, a summary of it. So if we just read the summary, it says this invoice is from Liberty Oilfield Services. It details the provision of wireline services for the well operation, and then they state the name of the well, and it includes, and they basically go and they explain what's being included in this invoice. It's a nice little summary of it. And then we talk about what invoices we were able to extract. So we extract a company name, Liberty Oilfield Services. We extract a well name, Queen Kelly Well. But you can see down here, because we're able to extract and match a well, we can go into our data set and we can basically connect this well to any internal data that we have. So here, for example, is a data set from the well data set related to this well. We can see what battery it's part of, because potentially this code could go to a battery or a pad. So we want to highlight that. We talk about, because we were able to match the pad, we looked at what wells were on that pad. So potentially this invoice may belong to a different well on that pad, so we list them here, just in case the vendor got it wrong. But then there's additional info, like things like AFEs. We went and searched all the AFEs, and we were able to extract this particular AFE is actually associated with this invoice. So this is where this invoice needs to get coded to. So really that's what we're trying to do here, is we take an invoice, run a complex set of logic on it, and we connect it to our internal data to understand how that coding should work. Let me show you how that works on the other side now, kind of the back-end data side. So to start off with, we've organized all the data in a very simple user interface. We've got well operations. This is the perspective of the well from the operations group. This is going to have the name of the well, synonyms. These are the API 10s and API 12s and API 14s. The well status. This is going to be important for the AI to use this information when it's trying to determine what kind of invoice it's going to be, whether it's what phase of the well it's in. If it's in production, for example, we're going to use LOE coding, so lease operating expense coding. If it's in drilling, we'll be using drilling codes. Let's say we're completion, we could be using the completion codes. So knowing the well status is very important for the AI to be able to understand that. But this really just has a whole bunch of information about these wells. There's 306 columns, I believe, in here, and it really covers a lot of information about the high-level information about the well. But this is a lot to read. Most people aren't going to read most of it, and it's a table, so it's very boring. So we've built this other little simple thing in here that basically goes in, and you can double click on any well, and it'll just summarize that well from the perspective of whatever you choose up here. So let's start off. I'm going to summarize this well from the perspective of an accountant. So we can double click on any well, and it'll go in and it'll bring up what information is relevant to this well from the perspective of an accountant. And you can see most of this information here is financial information. We've got production revenue, estimated recovery, a lot of information about this particular well. So this is a quick summary of that particular well from a accounting perspective. Well, let's do that same well, this Amaker VT7912H. We'll redo this from the perspective of, say, a drilling engineer. We'll double click on that again, and now this will clear, and now we'll see a summary from a drilling perspective. But this is completely different now. We're not talking about accounting information. We're talking about targets, well design, upper perf, lower perf, gross perforation, full perforation interval. So it's selecting the data based on the profile that we're passing to it. And you can see there's a lot of interesting information here. We still talk a little bit about economic and decline trends, but this is more from an engineering perspective than from an accounting perspective. So it's a really nice way to be able to look at your data from multiple perspectives. You can even go in, say, from a workover engineer. And let's just summarize this from a workover engineering perspective, just to really drive the point home. So workover engineers are interested in different types of things like well specifics, historical production, the perforation details, completion and stimulation information. So it's really choosing information that's specific to that perspective that we're reasoning from. So anyways, this is the well operations. This is really the operations information about the well. We've got accounting information about the well. And this is a spreadsheet that's basically designed to help coders figure out what AFE to use, what pad it could go to, what cost center it potentially could go to. But it's going to be based on the well phase, so we need to be able to incorporate this information. Chart of accounts, same type of thing. You can double click again on any of these things. Let's say you're a driller and you're trying to understand bit streamers and stabilizers. And I'm going to say I want to summarize that code from the perspective, again, of a drilling engineer. So if I double click on it, we'll get a chart of account description, but from the perspective of a drilling engineer. So this is basically specific training for that type of person using this code. This really summarizes the types of things they may want to consider putting in there, operational notes about it, how to break down invoices with cost tracking, and then maybe even some examples of what it might look like. And this is all generated based on the information in the data set and everything that the AI knows about the oil and gas industry. Again, we could change it maybe from a different perspective. An accountant might have a more detailed perspective. So if we double click on accounting, we're going to get a slightly different perspective for this well. And you can pick which one you want to look at. So the accountant one's a little bit simpler. It talks a little bit more about the types of costs that go on it as opposed to the types of tools. So there's different ways of looking at this. The system also has the ability to store historically what codes were charged by what vendors. So we know for each vendor what historically they coded to, what locations they coded to. And we even include an area in here to allow us to put specific advice to the coder. We can give it information here, like if you see an invoice coming in from this particular vendor, then you can follow these special instructions. So it's a way to offset how these different vendors can be coded. The system also supports all the types of features you'd expect in a modern system, the ability to search anywhere. For example, I'll type in the word cat, and it'll look for every well that mentions cat, both on the accounting side and the well operations, even pads that mention it. So for example, this is a pad with 8 wells on it. These are the wells. Chart of accounts, if the word cat shows up in the word chart of accounts. Same with vendors, you can look for the word cat. So it's really just a quick search. And then the usual, you can filter, sort. Let's be an example. Let's say chart of accounts, and I just want to look at a certain set of the accounts. I may only want to look at the things that are in a certain well phase. Maybe includes completions or something. So lots of ways to slice and dice the data. You can download the data. This can be turned off if you don't want it turned on. So a lot of useful ways of going in and looking at the information that the AI is using to code these invoices. But at the end of the day, it's really going to come down to how well that this invoice coder can work and basically take invoices. I'll just show you one more just to remind you of the idea here. This is another invoice. And it'll look at it. Looks like it's got to do with extracting water from tanks, taking the truck to the washout trailer. So this sounds like something to do with mud cuttings and water disposal, and sure enough, that comes up as the first code. We can look at it. So there's some handwriting on here, but like even notice we were able to extract out this matched well name based on this terrible handwriting. We picked it up. So it'll go in and it'll like look at all this information and basically figure out where to get the best information from. You can see the well name's not here. It was written here. We picked it up. We were able to go in. We can extract that well name from the data set. Because we know that, we know what batter and pad it's on. Because we know what pad it's on, we're able to look up all the wells that are on it, and vice versa. So there's a lot of information we can get out of this well, or this invoice, with just a very little bit of data. Okay, thank you for watching this video, and if you'd like to learn more, please contact us here at Data Squared. We're happy to show you the application and talk about how to build one for you. Thank you. Bye-bye.